Yo, what is going on, guys? It's your boy, Aaron 2 for 20, bring you guys the very last GBA Trades and Transactions video in the Ultra Sun and Moon Season 9 GBA run for the Ubers division. My last time covering trades and transactions for you guys, and we have a very, very long video, so it's a very fitting end to the Gen 7 and all of Gen 7 glory of the Aaron 2 for 20 Trades and Transactions. So, without further ado, we should just get right into it, because this is probably going to be like a 20-minute video, maybe a little less, but we have a lot, so we will see. So first up, we have a simple one. Aster is going to be dropping his Licky for a Registeel. This was a pretty simple trade. Aster just mentioned that he felt like he had a better Wish Passer on his roster being Salamence. This synergizes perfectly with Registeel, which is pretty understandable. He also felt like that Licky was a little bit too passive. Not to say that Registeel isn't passive in itself, but at the very least, I mean, Registeel does still have, like, potential for offense, and Licky just felt like in general was just a little bit too passive for his team. He felt like that Salamence plus Registeel was fine defensively anyway. So, that makes sense. I know Aster hasn't really seemed to like Licky. It's not exactly the most spammable mon in terms of draft, especially in Ubers when everything just hits really hard. So it's completely understandable. At the very least, Registeel is a really nice mixed wall. As mentioned before, it has really nice synergy with Ment, so I think in general it just fits really well on Aster's roster. So, yeah, it was a really simple trade. Next up, we have a little more of a complex trade. We have Goldoa Dragon making his first transactions of the season. Goldoa Dragon is going to be dropping Crobat, Dialga, and Victini for Stack Attacker, Reshiram, and Necrozma. So, one of the things, Goldoa actually spent a few days trying to workshop this. Him and I actually went through a few different sets of trades just because we weren't really sure what to do with this team. Goldoa came to me. I am a good friend, and he was like, Aaron, I am going to do this set of transactions. Not this original set, keep in mind, but he just came to me with a set of transactions. Like, Goldoa, I hate to be blunt here, but I think your team could definitely use some more workshopping. And him and I sort of sat down, we went through, and we realized there weren't exactly a lot of options that sadly could really help fix Goldoa's team. I recommended possibly reaching out to other couple coaches who I'll get into their transactions in a little bit to maybe see if he could drop Lele, so that way then he didn't have the repeat Psychic type, because I felt like that was sort of his issue with his team. And he sort of acknowledged that too. He said that he didn't really feel like anything really fit perfectly in terms of substitutions. But at the very least, what him and I sort of both mutually agreed on for this team, and less of me trying to like force certain mons, it seems is more so just like he sort of agreed as well that Crobat, at the very least, he felt like it just wasn't doing enough for him. He felt like Victini was just really redundant, and Dialga he wasn't a fan of. So, at the very least, this team, what he does gain through benefits is, one, Reshiram is a very nice special breaker, and it's a much more threatening dragon just offensively, which I felt like Goldoa could really use at the very least, because just in general, Reshiram pressures a lot of teams very easily by just being in the matchup. It's one of the scarier Ubers in the sense that it can break through steel types really effectively, which a lot of them can't necessarily do, whereas Reshiram's dual stab at least handles steel types, so that does help a lot with just going through fairies. Not through fairies, through steel types, which then Dragon just ram most teams, really besides fairy types, which is great. Not only this, but it does actually make it so that he's neutral to fairies, which is more so what I was trying to think of. But he's actually neutral to fairies, which is great, because a lot of these mons, obviously Dialga was still neutral as well, but a lot of these mons in general aren't exactly the best in terms of just handling fairies. Not only this, but he does have a separate mon that actually handles fairies now, being Stack Attacker, which is great, because originally his steel counter, his fairy counter was Crobat, which isn't the best necessarily, but Stack Attacker, especially in Ubers, is actually a very functional mon. It has a really nice Phys Def stat, and it's one of the few mons that actually take Phys Def hits from things such as Zekrom, which are very terrifying in the tier. It's a very good physical wall to the few physical Ubers that there are, and it's also a great fairy answer as well, because a lot of fairies cannot handle Stack Attacker, they can't necessarily break it. It's a really slow rocker. It can manually set Trick Room for itself to then start abusing things, which is really great for Goldoa's team. I feel like it was very important to have this. So hopefully Goldoa can take advantage of this. Not only that, but he also has another rocker that he's picking up through Necrozma, which is great. Again, it helps take pressure off of his other rockers in his roster. Necrozma's still a very nice psychic. I feel like it arguably takes advantage of terrain better than Victini would, because Victini's more so honestly just a fire type. It's just there to try and blow things back with V-Create. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Goldoa does with this team. I think also he's a lot more options with Necrozma versus Victini as an abuser of terrain, considering the fact that it can be mixed with the Photon Geyser, being able to just adapt to whatever situation he needs. And also he has Autotomize set up, so he can actually abuse it on the fast game as well without just needing to run a Scarf set, which is great. Obviously, Flame Charge Victini could be a thing, but it's just easier to run Autotomize. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough for Goldo's transactions. Next up, we have the Borussia Donphan. Now, this is a three-part transaction. So first, I'm going to go in to get into the Lars part, where he is dropping Mega Manectric and Deoxys Attack for Ho-Oh and Heliolisk. Now, Heliolisk is mainly here just so that way then he can pick up another Mega, which I will get into in a little bit. It sort of is a three-part trade, as I mentioned. And Deoxys Attack is actually going to be dropped for Ho-Oh, which is trade fodder. So, this is a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very incomplete set on the transaction, because neither of these two Mons actually, at least, the Heliolisk is here as an electric substitution, so that obviously will fit on Lars' roster. But the Mega slot being missing isn't going to matter in about 5 minutes when you guys see. And the Ho-Oh substitution is really just here to get that Mega. So, it should make a little more sense when I go into the next trade, part 2 of 3 of this trade. We have Tom Z dropping Whimsicott for Aerodactyl. So Tom is purely picking this up to trade it to Lars, actually. And this sort of goes into part 3 of this transaction, being Tom Z dropping, well, trading to Lars. So the San Jose Sharpedo is trading to the Borussia Donphan Aerodactyl and Mega Lucario for Ho-Oh and Conkeldurr. So, I'd already talked to Tom about this trade. I tried to talk him out of it for a while. I think that if Tom wanted to get Ho-Oh, this was arguably the best way to do it. I know that Tom really wanted to try and change something up about his roster, and he felt like that Ho-Oh would complete that. I personally disagreed very much so. I felt like that he had free one in Mega Lucario plus Coco. Obviously, Tom disagreed with that, or he wouldn't have made the trade. I think that Tom just doesn't really like his team right now, and he feels like that any diversity he can get out of it, no matter what it comes down to, whether it's dropping his Mega Lucario or anything else, he wants to do that. And it seems like Tom felt like this is the best way. At the very least, comparative to MV's roster, he does have a lot better hazard removal for Ho-Oh, which is great. Also, his team can handle a lot of Ho-Oh checks, I feel like, better than MV's team could have. But at the same time, I feel like that it's just so underwhelming compared to what he had. Whereas I think that Lars really benefits from this trade because of the fact that while he does have Mega Lucario now plus Landorus, that's going to be terrifying for a lot of teams. Teams are going to already struggle switching in on one of these Mons, let alone both of them together. Mega Lucario will annihilate any Ice type that threatens Lando Aya, which is phenomenal for Lars. He has really nice setup in both the speed department through Lando and also the offensive department through Mega Lucario, having setup in both Nasty Plot and Swords Dance. So his diversity as offense is phenomenal. He has great hazard support. Sadly, it's linked to Aerodactyl plus Rachi, and I believe that's it if I'm not mistaken. But he also does have Toxic Spikes. I believe Lars also still has Kofag on his team if I'm not mistaken, which would be really nice in general just for Lars to have all these nice Toxic Spikes plus all the rockers that he has. And while they're maybe not the most reliable rockers bar Aerodactyl, they're still rockers nonetheless. And realistically, he's only going to need the Lando plus the Mega Lucario. And I mean, I guess he does have Lando as a rocker as well. But in general, I feel like that just keeping rocks off of those two Mons, even if it means forcing them under Rachi or the Aerodactyl, is going to be perfect for Lars. His defense is also really nice, and he still has another phenomenal breaker in his lower tiers, being Kieran Black. So it's going to be near impossible to actually find a switch into Lars' team. I don't think a single switch into Kieran Black, Lando I, Mega Lucario actually exists. If there is one, I have yet to see it, but I don't think there is one. So good job on Lars making the by far hardest team to ever have defensive counterplay to in the entire GBA history. It's the hardest one there will probably ever be to find defensive counterplay to. And even then, he still has really nice offensive counterplay. Great support as well for his offense with things like Thunderwave Rachi. He has Heliolisk, obviously, which could be a nice scarf for first team. It's really great to just gain momentum as well through that plus Lando I. So I'm very curious to see how Lars does this season. I would genuinely be shocked if Lars gets another loss. Tom's team, on the other hand, I really think he's just trying to get diversity and just trying to get more diversity in prep. And while you can possibly do that through other offensive Lucario variants, at the very least, Ho-Oh has offensive and defensive versatility. So, well, versatility, I should say. But in general, I think that Tom's definitely got the short end of the stick here. I do want to say, though, I like Conk on the roster a lot. As I mentioned, if he was to pick up Ho-Oh with any other Mon, I think the Conk was definitely the best thing to get. So, at least Tom did that. I think that he at least has some nice options on his team. His team is still not a bad team, in my opinion. It still is a fine roster. But it's only so hard to say the good out of dropping Mega Lucario plus Coco Core from changing it to a Ho-Oh plus Tapu Coco Core. Not that it's a bad core, but it's just there's so much less about it. And I promised Tom I wouldn't go too hard in, but I can't think of the good to say about this besides that Tom just wanted to change. So I'm sorry, Tom, but I really can't think of anything. It's such a bad trade. But yeah, I think that Lars is gonna win the season now. It should be pretty obvious. Lars truly lucked out here. I don't think he could have gotten luckier. Next up on the trades, we have Jolt, a pretty simple trade. He's dropping Mismagius for Meloetta. Now, this is a pretty nice trade for Jolt, as he only had, in terms of the fighting types, he only had Breloom, and in terms of psychic types, he only had Mew. But at the very least, this does help, just in general. It's a really fat Spinef Mon, which is very nice, because it helps take pressure off of Magirna for AV. And it's just a nice coverage option, while also giving him some nice speed in between, I believe, Scolipede and Mega Aerodactyl when he chooses to run Pirouette form, which is very nice, of course. Meloetta has phenomenal coverage, and I feel like it's just in terms of utility and bulk and special offense in general, it's a better Mon than Mismagius was. It's not exactly like Mismagius is going to be thrown in front of Mons to spin block. It's too frail to do that anyway. So I do respect the trade a lot. I think Meloetta just offers far more to Jolt's team, even if it's a little bit repetitive, than Mismagius ever could. And even in terms of just a special setup Mon, Meloetta, of course, does have nice Combine support, which, of course, on top of its nice special defense stat, is going to be really nice to just take hits versus a lot of these Mons. Whereas Mismagius is going to set up a nasty plot if it does choose to set up and just die as it's setting up, because it won't take a hit from anything. So I think this is at least a nice trade for Jolt. I don't know how much it's going to exactly offer to Jolt's roster, but it's a nice trade nonetheless. It does at the very least, I guess, help with his Ghost weakness, but he didn't necessarily have a big one to begin with. Like, the Ghost weakness was just Mew and Mismagius. Again, the Dark weakness was just Mew and Mismagius, but he does still handle it pretty well. And he still is Dark weak with Meloetta anyway. But Meloetta, I feel like, is still just a phenomenal Mon. It's really nice speed to really nice bulk overall, so I think it will at least function well on Jolt's team. It takes AV pressure off of things like Incineroar and Magirna, as I mentioned before, so I'm excited to see what he does with it. I think that Jolt can definitely make it work. It's not a bad pick by any means on Jolt's roster. I think he actually can support it well. It just feels a little bit redundant, but there were worse trades, so I can't exactly shy Jolt on this one. And I'm sure, as I mentioned before, Jolt is a very good player. He will make it work, I'm certain. And as I mentioned, it does take a lot of pressure off of other sets, so you can really just, I guess it's more so, if anything, just trying to find substitutions for matchups he can't bring Mewtwo or can't bring an AV on certain Monster, which is completely understandable. I think at least in that regard, it's a good pickup. Anyway, though, I'm sort of going in circles here. Next up, we have Randy, coach of the Houston Team Rockets. He's dropping Lycanroc Day for Zygarde 10%. Now, one of the good things that this does offer for Randy, it's a really nice Space 115 Mon, which is really important speed tier to hit, especially for Randy's team. His peak was Jolteon, but between that and Mega Latias plus Lycanroc Day, I mean, really wasn't much. And so this bumps up his speed a little bit. Also gives him an actually offensive ground type, which I feel like that'll be very nice, because offensive ground types will handle a lot of typings, such as fire typings, which I guess he actually handles pretty well now that I look at it. I'm not necessarily sure, besides the fact that he has another offensive dragon, it really doesn't offer much besides the fact that 1,000 Arrows, I guess, is really, really hard to switch in on. Which he also does have really good coverage for grasses. He does have Infernape, of course, which is very nice for that. And even on other Mons, like Lottie has really nice Bolt Beam coverage. Yveltal will handle grasses pretty well anyway. So he does have nice coverage for grasses, and I feel like at the very least, I mean, Lycanroc I could see coming to more matchups than he'd bring Lycanroc to. Well, Zygarde would come to more matchups, I should say. But in general, I think, I'm not really sure what to think of this trade, I'm going to be honest. At least Randy does still have really good rockers, being Hippowdon, Clefable, and Infernape. They're all phenomenal rockers. He has really nice spikes and Roserade. She's not necessarily missing out on anything besides maybe a Tauntley, but even then, Infernape still fills that role fine. So at the very least, Zygarde just gives something unique. It's a really nice banded Mon. It's a nice setup Mon as well in terms of just Dragon Dancing, which is something that he actually lacks on his team, considering Latias does not get it. Only Mega Latios would get Dragon Dance. So I can definitely at least get why Randy made the roster. In terms of ice switchings, it does hurt a little bit because Randy has a fairly ice weak team between Hippowdon, Yveltal, Latias, Zygarde. But at the same time, he does a really nice ice counterplay again with Infernape, Metagross as well. So I think he can at least pair it really well with some other Mons in his lower tiers and make it work well. I'm just not necessarily sure what the trade was, I guess. At the very least, though, Randy will also be trading the Z Captain from Lycanroc to Metagross, which that I actually think in itself is going to be very nice for Randy's team. I think that was actually a great idea for Randy. Considering Metagross has a lot of really nice Z coverage options. It's a really nice breaker, especially with the Z. Base 130 special attack is nothing to shy at. It's got phenomenal coverage, and it can help muscle past a lot of things that Randy's team might otherwise struggle with. So I think that this in itself, at the very least, is worth the whole trade, to be honest. as mentioned before, and I think Randy even mentioned this, he just wasn't sure what to grab, which is completely understandable. I'd argue he really only needs the other 10 mons, and at the very least, between Zygarde and Lycanroc, Zygarde does have a lot more matchups I feel like they can come to, so I guess that in itself is a reason to pick it up. And it's not like his priority is shying either. He's getting an Extreme Speed Mon now, which is even better. He still has Sucker Punch and Infernape Mach Punch at the very least for base +1 priority. So again, he's not really missing out on anything with this trade, I guess. I'm not sure what he would have picked up over it, I guess. So I know I've been just rambling a lot, but I'm just not really sure what to say about this trade. So we're going to get into our last trade. And this one I think is actually one of the better trades of the season, or the very least for the week, I should say. We have Kyle, coach of the Miami Dolphins, the team that has never lost, but is also still looking for their first win this season, dropping Thunderous Eye, Mega Blastoise, and Blaziken for Zekrom, Tyranitar, and Slowbro. So one of the great things about this transaction is the fact that Kyle picks up an actually threatening Uber now. Blaziken in itself is a really subpar Uber compared to everything else in that tier. It's not a bad Uber, but it does depend a lot on a couple things. One being the ability of Baton Pass when it needs to, and sadly, Speed Boost Blaziken cannot in the GBA, which is very detrimental, because Blaziken thrives off of having that possibility for momentum. And two, it thrives off of having another Uber to really support it. And Kyle also had Protean Greninja, and I personally feel like that Kyle's team is built far better around Protean Greninja than it would be around Blaziken. So I think that this in itself is worth the whole transaction, and he then makes it even better. He drops Mega Blastoise for Mega T-Tar and Thundurus for Slowbro. So obviously, if he dropped Zekrom, he'd have to drop Thunder, so it's pretty self-explanatory. As much as I felt like the Thundurus fit well in Kyle's team, I think that Zekrom fits better, and there weren't exactly a lot of other options unless Kyle wanted to go with Dawnwings. And while I'm personally a big fan of Dawnwings on this roster, I think it would have actually been phenomenal despite also having had Celebi. I think that it definitely makes sense at least to go with the Zekrom option, considering just how naturally well Zekrom breaks, and how Kyle doesn't need to worry about being 4 times weak to anything. And Electric plus Dragon is actually a very underrated offensive typing. The two of them together will blow through a ton of mons in general, which is very nice for Kyle. Really great at speed tier as well. Dual Dragon is a little but Zekrom is never really clicking Outrage anyway, let's be honest. It's really just clicking 1,000 arrows, and that's all you ever need from it. So it's not the worst Dual Dragon it's not the worst Dual Dragon pairing to happen. To be fair, you can see it on a couple other rosters, such as Randy's, for example, as just mentioned. So it's not exactly an uncommon pairing either. Just with how many dragons there are in Ubers, it's a pretty common thing to have. That's why fairies are so prevalent. And not only this, but Kyle picks up a very threatening Mega with Mega T-Tar as well. I'll get into Slowbro in a little bit, but what Mega T-Tar offers Kyle is a really nice Pursuit Trapper, which is a great way to get around Lunala, which is still thriving around. I'm not sure if he actually still plays Aster, if I'm not mistaken. But at the very least, Mega T-Tar is still a very threatening Uber in general. Great Psychic switching, and Psychics are very threatening in Ubers, as a lot of Dark types are subpar at best in the tier compared to other things. So this is great, especially when there's so many fairies flying around. At the very least, Mega T-Tar can take hits from so many of them with its massive Spidef stat plus a Sand boosting it. So that'll be phenomenal. Not only that, but Kyle also does have an Excadrill on the team. So why he wasn't having a Sand Setter beforehand, I will never know. But he does get some actual use out of the drill now in terms of a sweeping department, which I think will be great for him. I think that will support his team phenomenally. And not only that, but he makes this transaction somehow even better by picking up Slowbro. So while he does have dual Psychic on the team, and they're two, at the very least, Celebi is a somewhat defensive Psychic, Slowbro is also a somewhat defensive Psychic. The two of them can not only be really nice together, because one can run a defensive set and one can run an offensive set each week, because they both do have potential to do both sets, which is great. But not only that, but at the very least, Celebi does provide other things such as a rocker for Kyle's team, whereas Slowbro can be more of an actual wall. And regen is phenomenal as well with Kyle's insane momentum gainers such as Greninja, Swellow. He has Celebi U-turn as well, Rabombi U-turn. So even Persian, he has so much momentum to get in that Slowbro to then just take a hit and then switch out to gain regen boosts. So I think that it actually fits really well in Kyle's team. So I'm curious to see how Kyle does. I'm hoping for another win for the Miami Dolphins because, you know, they've never lost, and I'm curious to see how they're going to do the rest of the season. Without further ado, though, that is it. That is the last transactions video for Ultra Sun and Moon in general for the GBA. It is my last transactions video with the GBA in general. I am sadly going to be departing after the season. I have done 3 seasons of transactions for the GBA plus the D-League as well. And I just need a change of pace, whether it's analyst for another league or just other opportunities in general. I just want to sort of change my focus. I might return in a future season, I'm not sure. But at the very least, I do want to take maybe a season off and possibly rethink things and see what I want to do when it comes to Gen 8. Because when it comes to Gen 8, I definitely do want to change my approach on things. So I would like to thank you all who have supported the trades and transactions for the past 2 seasons. I think that we have somehow left a mark, and whoever takes over for trades and transactions in the future is going to definitely have a lot of shoes to fill. Now, whether they will do it properly or not, we will have to wait and see. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens at the very least. So this has been your boy, AA Round 2 for 20, signing off of the GBA trades and transactions for one last time. And until next time, guys, actually until the future, wherever you guys see me on, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, guys.